to Global News in Zuma, Nigeria, where we bring you latest news stories from around the world and in Nigeria. We begin with Singapore ex-transport minister pleads guilty in graft case. Researcher says Russia's new Samad missile faced catastrophic failure. Biden names UAE as major defense partner in sporadic move. Israel-Hezbollah exchange strikes amid Lebanon's deadliest day. And global energy transition meets COP28 goals visible, say IEA. Talking judicial matters, former Singapore's Transport Minister S. Iswaran has pleaded guilty to accepting gifts worth thousands of dollars while in office after months of vigorously denying the charges against him. According to report, Iswaran, who resigned in January, pleaded guilty to 5 charges on Tuesday. The 62-year-old admitted to 4 charges of breaching Section 165 of the Penal Code, which forbids public servants from obtaining anything valuable from someone involved with them in an official capacity, as well as 1 charge of obstruction of justice. He was initially charged with 35 offenses. Those charges were expected to be taken into account for sentencing. Iswaran, best known in Singapore for bringing the Formula One F1 night race to the city-state, was the first political office holder in Singapore in almost 4 decades to face trial for corruption. The father of 3 was accused of accepting over 400,000 Singapore dollars, that's 306,000 US dollars, in gifts from 2 businessmen, property tycoon and hotelier Ong Beng Seng, who was also instrumental in securing the F1 race, and Lum Kok Sen as man with strong relations to grassroots organizations in Iswaran's former electoral ward. The gifts included tickets to West End shows, flights, bottles of whiskey, English Premier League match tickets, and a Brompton bicycle that Iswaran was given for his birthday. Neither Ong nor Lum have been charged with any offense. Civil servants and political office holders are prohibited from accepting gifts valued above 50 Singapore dollars, $38 US dollars in the course of their duties. Iswaran had paid back 380,000 Singapore dollars, that's 295,000 US dollars, to the state and will forfeit the items he received, according to reports. Describing Iswaran as a more than a passive acceptor of the gifts he received, a man who had maintained significant business relations with Ong and Lum, prosecutors asked for a jail term of between 6 and 7 months, according to more reports. Singapore was ranked the world's 5th least corrupt country in 2023 by Transparency International. The last corruption investigation involved a minister was in 1986 when former Minister of National Development Tech Chiang Wan was accused of accepting 1 million Singapore dollars, that's 775,000 US dollars in bribes. Ted took his own life before investigations could be completed. Singapore's government ministers are among the world's highest paid politicians, with starting salaries set at 46,750 Singapore dollars, that's 36,250 US dollars a month. The government argues such enormous paychecks are necessary to stave off the risk of corruption. Iswaran's trial was initially planned to begin earlier this month, but was delayed until September 24th. His legal team was led by Davinder Singh, a senior counsel and former lawmaker with the ruling People's Action Party (PAP). Hearings were due to continue until September 27th, with the prosecution listing 56 witnesses, including Iswaran's wife. According to analysis of satellite images of the launch site, Russia appears to have suffered a catastrophic failure in a test of its Samad missile, a major weapon in the modernization of its nuclear arsenal. The images captured by Maxar Technologies on September 21st show a crater about 60 meters to 100 feet wide at the launch silo at the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in northern Russia. They disclose extensive damage that was not visible in pictures taken earlier in the month. The RS-28 Samad intercontinental ballistic missile is intended to deliver nuclear warheads to hit targets thousands of miles away in the United States or Europe, but its development has been dogged by delays and testing setbacks. Pavel Podvig, an analyst based in Geneva who runs the Russian Nuclear Forces project, said, "By all indications, it was a failed test. It's a big hole in the ground. There was a serious incident with the missile and the silo." Timothy Wright, a research associate in the International Institute for Strategic Studies (IISS) in London said the devastation in the area immediately surrounding the missile silo was suggestive of a failure soon after ignition. The before and after satellite images were very persuasive that there was a big explosion, and said he was convinced that the summer test had failed. James Acton, a nuclear specialist at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, said. The Kremlin referred questions on Samad to the Ministry of Defense. The ministry did not respond to requests for comment and has made no announcements about planned summer tests in recent days. The US and its allies are closely watching Russia's development of its nuclear arsenal at a time when the war in Ukraine has pushed tensions between Moscow and the West to the most dangerous point in over 60 years. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin has said repeatedly that Russia has the biggest and most advanced nuclear arsenal in the world and warned the West not to cross a threshold that could lead to a nuclear war. Now, Joe Biden, United States President, has recognized the United Arab Emirates, UAE, as a major defense partner, deepening military ties despite friction over the war in Sudan as deadly tensions ratchet in the Middle East. The announcement on Monday, which came following a White House meeting between Biden and UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, makes the UAE only the second country to receive the designation. The Biden administration gave India the designation in 2021. The White House, in a statement, said the designation will further enhance defense cooperation and security in the Middle East, East Africa, and the Indian Ocean regions. It added that it will also allow for unprecedented cooperation through joint training exercises and military-to-military collaborations between the military forces of the United States, the UAE, and India, as well as other common military partners in furtherance of regional stability. The meeting came as Israel ramped up its attacks on Lebanon. At least 492 people, including 35 children, were killed on Monday in Israeli attacks on the territory, which it said were targeting Hezbollah military infrastructure. A U.S. State Department spokesperson said, according to reports on background on Monday, also said U.S. officials will be discussing concrete ideas for off-ramp on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly this week. Washington has been regularly criticized for avoiding using its leverage, including the billions in military aid it provides to Israel, to calm tensions in the region. On Gaza, the two leaders underscored their commitment to continue working together towards ending the conflict and the need for the United Nations humanitarian aid to be permitted into the enclave, the White House said. To date, at least 41,431 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza amid a closely year-long Israeli offensive. The UAE has been a leading voice in the United Nations Security Council, putting forward resolutions condemning Israel's war on Gaza, often putting it at odds with the veto-carrying U.S. Still, Washington has long viewed the Gulf country as an integral to any post-war recovery plans in Gaza. The White House said Biden and Al-Nahyan discussed a path to stabilization and recovery that responds to the humanitarian crisis, establishes law and order, and lays the groundwork for responsible governance, as well as their commitment to the two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. On Israel-Gaza war, Israel and Hezbollah have traded cross-border strikes a day after Israeli airstrikes aiming the militant group in Lebanon killed closely 500 people and injured 1,600 others. Monday was the deadliest day in the country in closely 2 decades. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, told the people of Lebanon to leave the areas where Israel is aiming Hezbollah, and that his country is not at war with them, but with the Iran-backed group. People are fleeing their homes after receiving automated calls, text messages, and broadcasts urging them to evacuate. Israel and Hezbollah have been stuck in tit-for-tat escalation since the war in Gaza began. But over the past week, Israel's intensified attacks on Hezbollah have again intensified fears of a broader regional war. The Israeli military said it is getting ready for its next phase following the strikes and did not rule out the possibility of a ground invasion. Hezbollah has said a battle without limits was underway. Iran too has warned Israel of dangerous consequences following Israel's strikes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the Security Cabinet on Monday that the country's aim in its military operations in Lebanon is to cut Hezbollah from the war with Hamas, an Israeli official said, according to report. The same official said the cabinet has agreed to continue to raise the level of military operations every day. Israel is aware of the risks, the source said, and is ready to stop at any moment. It is up to Hezbollah, according to the source. On Monday, Herzi Halevi, Israel's chief of staff, said the military was preparing for the next phases. Halevi said he will elaborate on those next steps soon. Israel's military said it hit dozens of targets in Lebanon after Hezbollah launched multiple barrages on Tuesday, marking the newest cross-border attacks in their most intense confrontation in nearly 2 decades. The Israeli military said almost 30 rockets had been launched by Hezbollah toward Israel since midnight, and that it responded to the strikes with air and artillery attacks. The rockets were launched over 4 barrages, it said. The Israel Defense Forces (IDF) said in a statement the Israeli Air Force struck dozens of Hezbollah targets in numerous areas in southern Lebanon, including strikes on the militants and rocket launches that were used to target Ha'amakim, an area close to the northern Israeli city of Haifa. The IDF also said artillery and tanks had hit targets in the areas of the town Aita Ashab and Ramiyeh in southern Lebanon. In the early hours of Tuesday, Hezbollah said it had fired several rocket barrages into northern Israel, aiming the Ramat David Air Base, Megiddo Airfield, and the Amos Base, all located in the vicinity of the town of Afula in northern Israel. Now, the International Energy Agency (IEA) has said in a report tripling renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency by 2030 to meet COP28 goals are feasible. The document published on Tuesday says that while conditions are favorable, hitting the aims, the North Star for what the energy sector needs to do will need a huge push to boost storage capacity and grid connections. The report, From Taking Stock to Taking Action, How to Implement the COP28 Energy Goals, is the first comprehensive global analysis of what putting the targets into practice will achieve and how it can be done, the IEA said. Nearly 200 countries agreed at the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai last year to reach net zero emissions from the energy sector by 2050, promising to triple renewable energy capacity like wind and solar. The IEA report suggests that the renewable energy goal is within reach thanks for favorable economics, ample manufacturing potential and strong policies, but adds that more renewable capacity by itself will not slash fossil fuel use and reduce costs for consumers. The report reads, to unlock the full benefits of the tripling goal, countries need to make a concerted push to build and modernize 25 million kilometers of electricity grids by 2030. The world will also need 1,500 gigawatts (GW) of energy storage capacity by 2030. The IEA Executive Director, Fatih Birol, the goals set by nearly 200 countries at COP28 can be transformative for the global energy sector, putting it on a fast track towards a more secure, affordable and sustainable future. To ensure the world doesn't miss this huge opportunity, the focus must shift rapidly to implementation. The COP28 energy goals should lay the foundation for countries' new climate targets under the Paris Agreement. They are the North Star for what the energy sector needs to do, he continued, and for the international cooperation is vital to deliver fit-for-purpose grids, sufficient energy storage and faster electrification, which are integral to move clean energy transitions quickly and securely. COP28 UAE logo in white is displayed on the screen with a green bin. The report also highlights the need for a country-specific approach to double energy efficiency by 2030. Doing so will potentially cut global energy costs by almost 10%, reduce emissions by 6.5 billion tons, and strengthen countries' energy security. The document reads, countries at COP28 also promised to double energy efficiency measures to assist curb power use. But these targets will need governments to make efficiency much more of a policy priority. Countries must embed renewable and energy efficiency goals in their national plans to meet goals set under the Paris Climate Agreement, the IEA said. Emissions from the global energy sector hit a record high last year. Tripling renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency measures to lessen power use could reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 10 billion tons by the end of the decade compared with what is otherwise expected. More from the report says. The publication comes as leaders from government and business come together at Climate Week NYC to try to drive forward action against climate change. On more stories now, China reveals new measures to stimulate economy. China's central bank has launched a major package of steps targeted at revitalizing the country's flagging economy. Governor Pan Gongsheng, People's Bank of China, PBOC, announced plans to lower borrowing costs and permit banks to add their lending. The step comes after a series of disappointing data has increased expectations in recent months that the world's second-largest economy will miss its own 5% growth target this year. Stock markets in Asia jumped after Pan's announcement. Speaking at a rare news conference alongside officials from two other financial regulators, he said the central bank will cut the amount of cash banks have to hold in reserve, known as Reserve Requirement Ratios, RRR. The RRR will initially be cut by half a percentage point in a move expected to free up about 1 trillion yuan, adding that another cut may be made later in the year. Further measures targeted to improve China's crisis-hit property market include cutting interest rates for existing mortgages and lowering minimum down payments on all types of homes to 15%. The country's real estate industry has been battling with a sharp downturn since 2021. Many developers have collapsed, leaving huge numbers of unsold homes and unfinished building projects. The PBOC's latest economic stimulus measures come just days after the U.S. Federal Reserve lowered interest rates for the first time in over 4 years with a bigger than usual cut. In Asia afternoon trading hours, major stock indexes in Shanghai and Hong Kong were over 3% higher. Still in China, China's foreign minister urges world powers to unite on global challenges. On Monday, China's foreign minister called on world powers to work together in addressing global challenges. Wang Yi, while addressing a meeting of delegates at the Summit for the Future, highlighted the significance of the United Nations Charter. We need to build an equal and orderly, multipolar world and defend the United Nations-centered international system. The international order based on international law and the basic norms of international relations, underpinned by the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, said Wang Yi, adding that all countries, regardless of their size and strength, are equal members of the international community. International affairs should be handled through consultation by all countries. We need to strengthen the authority of international rule of law, reject the law of the jungle where the strong bully the weak, oppose acts of hegemonism, such as unilateral sanctions. He called on major powers to lead by example. Meanwhile, Russia rejects support for United Nations Future Pact. Russia has refused to back a United Nations blueprint targeted at bringing the world's increasingly divided nations together to address 21st century challenges from climate change and artificial intelligence (AI) to rising conflicts and growing inequality and poverty. Russian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Vershinin, speaking on Monday in New York at the Summit of the Future meeting, said, "We'd like to underscore that the summit outcome documents do not impose any obligations on the Russian Federation on the provisions which did not achieve consensus." The United Nations General Assembly approved the blueprints on Sunday. The 42-page Pact for the Future challenges leaders of the 193 United Nations member nations to turn promises into real actions that make a difference to the lives of the world's over 8 billion people. The pact was adopted at the opening of the two-day Summit of the Future called by United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who thanked leaders and diplomats for taking the first steps and unlocking the door to a better future. The United Nations General Assembly adopted a pact for the future to meet the challenges of the 21st century. Now comes the hard part, uniting the world's divided nations to move quickly to implement the agreement's 56 actions. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said simply preserving the status quo is not an option, as he signaled U.S. support for the pact. The United States is committed to adapting the United Nations system to reflect the world of today and tomorrow, not the one that existed in 1945, he said. We will not accept efforts to tear down, dilute, or fundamentally alter the core principles of the United Nations Charter, he added. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres appreciated the 193-member world body for approving the deal. He says it unlocks the door for nations to join forces to address challenges ranging from climate change and artificial intelligence to rising conflicts and increasing inequality and poverty. The pact was adopted at Sunday's opening of two-day summit of the future. Right up to Sunday's vote, it wasn't clear whether the pact will be adopted. In fact, there was so much suspense that United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres had three prepared speeches, one for approval, one for rejection, and one if things weren't clear, United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said. In part 2, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria, but after this break, don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We begin stories from Nigeria with political matters. Yaga Africa says Edo Guba poll results were manipulated. The Edo governorship poll conducted on September 21st failed the integrity test, Yaga Africa, a civil society organization CSO, says. In a statement signed by Samson Itodo, Yaga's executive director, and Aisha Abdullahi, chairperson of the 2024 Edo election mission, the organization said the election collation process was marred by inconsistencies which suggest a manipulation of the vote. Based on reports from 287 of 300, that's 96% sampled polling units, Yaga Africa's statistical analysis indicates inconsistencies in the official results announced by INEC. The statement reads, for instance, the official results announced by INEC for APC in Oredo and Igbo local government areas fall outside the PRVT estimate. In Ison West local government area, the official results for PDP fall outside the PRVT estimates. Also, in Oredo local government area, the official results as announced for LP fall outside the PRVT estimates. Yaga Africa, which said it deployed 300 stationary and 25 roving observers, covering a representative sample of polling units across all 18 local government areas, also criticized INEC's poor planning in terms of logistics. The organization condemned acts of violence and disruption of voting and results collation process by political thugs and hoodlums, mainly violence directed at voters and election officials. However, it noted that INEC consistently applied its guidelines in managing the accreditation and voting process in a significant number of polling units. It said the Beavers machines functioned optimally as all voters in the queue by 2:30 p.m. local time were permitted to vote despite the late opening of polls in some places. Barely 48 hours after the Edo State governorship election, where Senator Monday Okpebolo of the All Progressives Congress APC was declared winner by the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC, the People's Democratic Party PDP said it is heading to court to retrieve its mandate. The acting national chairman of PDP, Ambassador Umar Magun, said, according to reports, charged the people of Edo State to remain resolute and undeterred as PDP takes sure and firm steps to retrieve the mandate which every means legal and available in a democracy. He revealed that it is clear that the nation's democracy is under threat, adding that APC during the election connived with government-controlled agencies. And finally on the news, federal government sets up disaster relief fund. The federal government has formed a disaster relief fund to tackle disasters such as flooding. Wally Edun, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy, revealed this on Monday after the Federal Executive Council FEC meeting, which was presided over by President Bola Tinubu. According to the minister, in this era of climate change, no matter the prevention measures in place, disasters will surely happen. He stressed the significance of pooling funds from various sectors and being ready when disasters strike. Edun also said the council passed the Economic Stabilization Bill, which is broadly based on the recommendations of the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee. He explained that this bill is targeted at implementing the committee's recommendations, including proposed amendments to the company's income tax. Another look at the top stories. Singapore ex-transport minister pleads guilty in graft case. Researchers says Russia's new Samad missile faced catastrophic failure. Biden names UAE as major defense partner in sporadic move. Israel-Hezbollah exchange strikes amid Lebanon's deadliest day. And global energy transition to meet COP28 goals visible, says IEA. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Till next time.